See, critical minerals are those which are essential for the economic development and national security, where supply chains might not necessarily always be within the domestic shores, and it is very important to be able to secure the supply chain because they span in many areas that keep the economy and the nation going. You just listed the various areas in which the critical minerals are required, like electric vehicle and battery storage, the renewable energy systems, semiconductors and electronics, defense and aerospace. You have the green hydrogen production. So in most of these areas, uh, over the last few years and maybe the last decade, the usage of all these minerals have increased significantly across sectors that have become very critical as far as their seamless functioning happens. So it is very important to secure the supply chain, and it is very important to see that they are able to continue the pace as well as grow the economic development in the country. And that is where they are different from the normal easily available minerals that are in preponderance in the country. And the other thing about the critical minerals is that they are not necessarily always in a good supply, and might be confined to geographies which now are becoming an important aspect of the geopolitical tussle. So China, which holds a lot of the critical minerals, often creates problems, as you have seen in the recent past. And so one has to be able to look it as a national priority to be able to secure its supply chain as well as see that no disruptions happen in the economic activity. Well, this is a fantastic program delved last year by the cabinet, and it actually runs into 7 areas. Basically, idea is to boost India's domestic capabilities as well as the international arrangements under which you could get your critical minerals supplies. So the 7 aspects are like, as I mentioned, the increasing the domestic critical minerals production, then acquisition of critical mineral assets abroad, then recycling of the critical minerals that are available for usage, of course, the trade and the markets, then scientific research and technological advancement in all those areas. We have resources. We really haven't over the years been able to build on the right optimal ecosystems for harnessing those. So how do we improve on that? Of course, the human resource development and skilling around this sector, and then of course even find the right funding to be able to look at this from a long-term strategic success. So it's a wholesome approach by the government, and I think it is just in time because the geopolitics around critical minerals and rare earths was suddenly increasing as the Chinese and the Americans were getting into that particular tussles on the tech space, and India was somewhere getting caught in between. So you had to look at this, and the cabinet took a right call on that. Absolutely. I think, as the Honorable Prime Minister has also mentioned about the focus for the 4 years, last 4 years. So, in June 2023, the Ministry of Mines had actually finalized a list of 30 critical minerals. And that was done after comprehensive stakeholder consultations. Now, this was a very good exercise, I would say, because that exercise actually looked at the overall sector to link it to many of the larger policy-wide reforms that were happening on the country in many sectors, including technology. So the classification, that came in that the four wide classification, the energy transition minerals like, say lithium, graphite, cobalt, nickel, vanadium, or the technology and electronic materials, again, gallium, germanium, indium, silicon, the high purity variety. The strategic and defense metals like, platinum group element, platinum, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium, and the industrial minerals, the copper, zinc, tin, uh, bismuth, niobium. All of those, uh, and that classification is very, very important, because if you go to the sectors, the electric vehicles and battery storage, that itself is a big development. When you have green commitments to the international community that you have made, and then you have to make it, you have to be on target also. That's where you need those minerals available and the supply chain steady. Similarly, the focus on our renewable energy is significant. This country has really benefited from government's significant policy changes to get renewable energy in place across the country. The amount of gigawatt uh, bolstering that has happened is significant. In fact, if you look at it, each 3 megawatt turbine needs about 600 kg rare earth magnets. So this is also significant. And with our 500 gigawatt target by 2030, silver demand could reach to 2,000 to 3,000 tons annually. So if you just take those two sectors, and you mentioned about the green hydrogen, or green hydrogen again is another very, very specific area that the government has concentrated, and tomorrow a lot of the public transport will run on it. Again, that's an area where you require a lot of work and harnessing to be done, and I think we have achieved success in a very good period point of time. So it all ultimately goes to many of the efforts that are happening parallelly together, where of course the focus on Atmanirbharta is there, the focus to look at these towards the Viksit Bharat 2047 targets are there. So in a wholesome approach of growth of all the critical sectors, this whole effort from the India's critical minerals mission delves into quite extensively, and I think the milestones that have been put across, and maybe by 2030 we would far much exceed many of these areas. But what is very critical, and I repeat it, is that the international geopolitics around critical minerals have become so pronounced, and and many of the tantrums that you see that has happened, particularly the China-US game, and the US president also, regularly changing his positions, as well as China acting pricey on this sector. I think we could get caught, because we have a lot of our supplies actually coming from China, and by the time we are able to harness whatever we have in the country in, say, far-flung areas also like Arunachal Pradesh and all, it will take time. So if you see that what we are looking at as build up and boost the domestic capacity, build up the international linkages, acquire international thing, do our own skilling, do our own harnessing, all of that. It's a comprehensive plan, and I would think that it falls into all the other policy, wider, larger policies to take the country forward. This falls very much as a part of that whole game.
Okay.
I think, Mr. Rajesh, this is a very, very critical area, because we have not have always had the best of the relations with China despite our intent, and many of the steps that they take often really create concerns about what their intent is. And so if you follow very closely, yesterday the new US ambassador to India, in his first speech in Delhi to the embassy staff, mentioned about India uh, will be invited next month to the PAX Silica, which, if you recall, was announced last month in Washington with 9 countries as the signatory, including all the four, including the three Quad countries, but India was not there. Now, this was a certain kind of a concern because India was also a very important part of the ecosystem that was giving a boost to the global semiconductor ecosystem, the AI ecosystem. So that is also very, very significant. Now, if you look at PEC Silica, why was it formed? It was formed to see that the global supply chain around critical minerals and the ecosystem, that runs on them do not get trapped into the geopolitics. So while it might still be seen as an American-led alliance, but it has members who are globally seen to be far much more stable, reliable, like Japan, the UK, Australia. So I think this is very, very significant that we are also getting into this alliance. But to come specific to your question, yes, the worry around China is very much there because for the last few years they have weaponized these area of critical minerals, and because they have a lot of reserves themselves, and they have already shown that at some stages, they are trying to pull the rug on and off. This has created concerns among most of the nations, and that is where the international cooperation gets very, very significant. I wouldn't be surprised to see that this year, particularly, would see far much more global conversations on critical minerals cooperation, and possibly, in if all at all, China also understands that it has to be a far much more mature player in this game. It will also cooperate. But right now, it's still in a state of flux, and I think we all have to secure our own supply chain in priority.
Okay.
I think, in the mission itself, from the 2024 year to the 2030-31 timeframe, some of the estimates have been made. For example, the securing the domestic and foreign sourcing, about more than 1,200 crores have been put across as for exploration, but incentives for recycling also has more than about 400 crores. And the strengthening the value chain, skill development, some 10,000 crores have been put. So about 35 to 40,000 crores in the immediate this period of time is definitely going to be put into the sectors, because it's just not only the trading part of the thing, but a lot of the work around building the capacity would consume a lot of money. But henceforth, I think the constraints around investments won't be missing. And most important is that a lot of the industry and the private sector would also get involved in this. So they are also going to bring their investment. So I think, it is going to be a sector that will see a lot of investments in the next few years. So, to give you a figure, as I have told you, maybe about 35, 40,000 crores I see immediately, but there would be far much more, because the cascading impact
Okay.
when people see the benefits and when they see the larger market would definitely be there.